Hey, good afternoon. And this is our first Palm Journal Club back for 2022. We're getting a little bit of a late start here in January, but it's good to get things going again. And so just to check in with everybody, interesting semester here, working on a neurobiology class as sort of a stopgap. It's not my field, and I'm learning as I go, and this is something you do with small schools every now and then, and so it hasn't been bad so far, but it's only been a week and a half, so we'll see how that continues. Dominique, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Last week I went from teaching 12 credit hours at my college I'm normally adjuncting at to teaching 3 more at another community college to teaching 3 more at another state school. So I went from 12 credit hours to 18 credit hours in a week.
And how far apart are those 3 schools?
The one that I want to permanently work at, where I put in my letter of being like, hey, can I please work here full time because I'm looking for a full-time faculty. It's like an hour and 20 minutes from my house. The other 2 are about 25 minutes.
Wow.
So yeah.
Best of luck. I mean, that's exciting, but still, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So if I don't show up to some of the later journal clubs, you'll know why.
Well, I'll interpret that as a positive, so that's a good thing. And Mindy, how are you?
Things are good. We started classes yesterday in person. I'm teaching a reduced load this semester, which I probably should say in front of Dominique. So my first class was today. I didn't teach yesterday, so I don't teach tomorrow. But that being said, I have a ton of paper revisions and I'm also going out for promotion this year. So I'm pretty busy writing, and so it's probably good to have the extra time. It's just motivating myself. This is a great distraction.
Is the promotion next academic year?
No, it's due in February, so it would be for this.
Oh wow, that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah. So that's generally how they do it. I couldn't do it in the fall. I was too busy in the summer. So I don't know how I found time now to do it.
Oh, so you can do it any semester?
You could do it any semester,
oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Fall
cool.
or spring.
Very cool. All right, well, let me pull up the paper. I have way too many screens open. Oh, there it is. And I picked this guy out because it's something I've thought a lot about for here. I've never implemented it. Now, I'm at a smaller institution, so the scalable part may not be as relevant, but I'm very intrigued about peer mentoring and how to successfully bring peer mentoring into a class, especially at the introductory level. And so this struck me as something that could be a really interesting conversation topic, especially if some of you guys have at your own institution some previous experience with the idea of doing some form of peer mentoring, and if you've had any degree of success with it. So this is from UC Santa Barbara, and it's looking at 3 different cohorts of introductory students, I think incoming freshmen, that have opted into this biome program, biology, mentoring, and engagement. The gist of it being that upperclassmen are regularly meeting with underclassmen with the objective of providing a sort of how to college experience. And does that help with keeping the students number 1 with good grades, but number 2 retained in STEM? And they are using general chemistry as their model for that, because it sounds that general chemistry is something that one would do at most concurrently with biology and probably before biology. So Carlos is now here. Carlos, how are you doing this fine day? That's your intro? I got you. Okay.
Surviving. Even my background is messed up.
What's wrong with it?
Is it upside down? Do you see it upside down?
We see it fine.
No,
No.
it's upside down. think it's
Oh.
upside down. I can't tell. I mean, you look good, but
The,
I don't know.
the wolf is howling upwards, and
no, it's good. Yeah, you're good.
and I can read
Oh,
your
we're
name.
good
So
then.
you're, yeah, because you guys are the wolf pack, and yeah, you're good.
Wait, you're the wolf pack too?
Yep.
All right, and so Carlos, we had just set up the table here for how they did this. I would actually like to know, before we dive into the meat of this paper, do you guys have any experience with any form of peer mentoring? And Mindy's shaking her head, so maybe I'd ask her to comment on this first. What have you done with this?
So at my institution, we have, I guess, different degrees of this. So we do have a peer mentor program. And the peer mentor program here for us is that our first year students have to take like a first year seminar, topic based, whatever they want, right? But then each of those courses has a peer mentor embedded in it. And what that peer mentor does is they go to the class, they're at upperclassmen. They meet with the students regularly. They talk with them. They guide them through like the transition process. It's basically a whole year, thing for them to be able to meet with them. They do programming. But then in addition, in our first year, like in our introductory courses, such as chemistry and biology, we don't call it a peer mentor, we call it a course mentor. And this student has taken the course and they go to the course and they like offer extra tutor sessions, or they talk to the students about success in the course, and helping them. And when they get to the other class and they realize there's not a course mentor, they worry, because I think that they like having that like student connection, I've seen.
And you're at a relatively small institution, correct?
Yeah, we're about right now, because of, not just retention, but just because of overall, we're at like, I think 1,100.
Yeah. Oh, so you're comparable to us. So that's actually very encouraging for me to hear, because sometimes when I think about these ideas and potentially doing something like this, some of the pushback I get is, well, we're a small institution. We don't actually need these things. And so it's good to hear a model of a small college doing this as well. Have you guys gotten any idea of assessment, like if it is paying dividends?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, when we implemented, well, actually I should say when we restructured it, we've always had it. It was restructured about 10 years ago. And we went through, like the middle states, and you go through all the accreditation, you do the actual like crunching of the numbers. It did increase our retention rate, I think by 2%, 2 or 3%, which is actually pretty darn.
That's a bunch of money.
Darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been at this game long enough to know that is not a insignificant piece of money, 2-3%.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Okay. And this is just one more question. Is this in the STEM fields, or do you have this in across the whole college?
Well, the course mentor is only in STEM.
Okay.
The peer mentor is across the entire campus. So it's, but like the first year seminars are, obviously topic based.
I'm sitting here thinking, because I have a class this coming fall, and I'm thinking about like, it's like an inspiration, like who could I get and who could sit in the class and help all of these incoming students. I'm officially intrigued. I've got to write some of this down.
Course mentors are great. I mean, it can be called something different. I love them.
Well, because we do a peer mentor program, but it's like, oh, we use them at orientation and then we like never see them again. And it's just sort of welcome to the college. And it would be neat to do something a little more immersive. I definitely want to think about this. So with all of that said, Carlos, I want to pick on you as the high enrollment representative here. Although Dominique, I'm not actually sure. How big is your institution, the one that you're doing the lion's share of your work at?
Smaller than yours, actually. We generally have about 1,000, but due to COVID, we're about a little over 900 right now.
Yeah, no, where is it?
Keuka Park. It's south of Rochester, New York.
Yeah, no, I'm from Binghamton, New York. So when you say Keuka, I'm like, oh, you're in the Finger Lakes. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the YK Finger Lakes.
Okay, yeah, so 3 out of 4 of us are in the same boat of being at fairly tiny colleges. Carlos is at a gargantuan institution, and so how would you feel about this?
But here's the funny part. I teach in a program where our sizes are capped because of the lab limitations. So my biggest class is 32.
Nice.
And most classes are capped at 16. But for a long time, I've been, and I finally got my wish mic, and now it's a lot of work. I've been wanting to bring back our 200 level class
Okay.
for first and second year students. We no longer have phage hunters because Sue moved on and people retired or did other things. And I just didn't have the bandwidth to keep, we didn't have anyone to teach phage hunters.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a big gap. And so I'm teaching a 200 level biotechnology and sustainability class. And I asked our institution whether they would, I really like the model. And this is Uma from Palm, made me think about peer learning assistants in her case, in large chemistry classes. And I asked our academic success center, and they cannot offer PLAs to classes smaller than, they had a number, but it was in the 50s or 60s or something. So what I've done is try to use, I really want student voices helping each other. So I've called them student ambassadors, and we're using them for the first semester for a small class, and using is not, we're integrating seniors or juniors and seniors to help the first and second year students learn about citation and resources and composting and electronic waste on campus, but not to the scale of something like this where you have 400 students and you can evaluate outcomes.
Thank you for that. And I think that is one of the strengths of what is in this particular paper, is you have some statistical rigor to what it is they're doing. And this is always the part when we look at something like this that I freely admit that I am not a statistician. And when they got to the middle of this paper, I'm like, I cannot evaluate this. It passed peer review muster and CBE. CBE takes this stuff seriously. I'm not concerned about the quality of the statistics. I simply don't have the knowledge base to talk a lot about the modeling behind it. This paper does a decent job of talking about the theory behind what they're looking at, the idea of why mentorship would be important. A couple of us here, actually most of us here, are involved in some of our grant writing projects. And so this theoretical foundation is good to see and remind ourselves of in a bunch of respects. They talk about, and I didn't catch exactly the difference between peer mentorship and near peer mentorship. And I think it's getting at the ratio of, if you're looking at people 1-to-1 versus a pod of people to 1, you're still doing peer-to-peer, but it's a near. It's not exactly the perfect ratio of like total attention, but it's still something where you're getting a pretty good concentrated experience. And the program is very similar in some respects to what you guys are describing in terms of selecting upperclassmen who can embed themselves in the class. But then the difference here is the distinctness of what the extra material is. I guess I would ask Mindy and Carlos, or Mindy especially, how do you select the people who are the mentors? I mean, you can look at GPA and that's one thing, but I'd imagine there's a lot more holistic things you have to consider.
Yeah, I mean, for the peer mentor one, so the one which is like college-wide, that's, you know, they have to have letters of recommendation from faculty. We want to see that there's students who maybe are like involved in other clubs, so like doing a lot of stuff on campus, because we want people who are outgoing and know the campus. But for the course mentor, those students are, again, recommended by the faculty. Most likely they did well, but we also need somebody who's personable. these students are required, we do make them go through a training with our Office of Academic Skills, just so they understand like interactions with students and like things you can like do and you don't do. So it's a pretty rigorous, and they can either get paid or they can get credit for doing this process. So we have it as like a 1 credit or as a like paid number of hours. But yeah, it's pretty lengthy to get selected.
Okay. I know we have had some botched efforts at starting this. For the training, our rhetoric center actually does training for their own peer, I guess peer mentors would be the right word. And they were trying to offer some of that stuff up college-wide, but then there were some personnel turnovers. And so we haven't implemented that to the degree that we wanted to do it. So it's good to hear other ideas of how the actual training could be done. I could think of people who could be good at this here. Sometimes, and those of you at smaller schools may relate to this, you have this small cadre of people who do 25 different activities, like they are the lifeblood of the school in terms of doing everything. But I'm also wary of burning them out in terms of giving them additional responsibilities. So I think that would come into my mind too, thinking about recruiting and building some of these people into the program. So here is our theory. And so in figure 1, dashed lines there you see in the figure, hypothesized relationships based on the literature. And then from there, what they're actually going to be measuring. And you see the descriptions, and a couple interesting things leap out to me on the descriptions. Number 1, the fact that biology is an absolutely female-dominated profession at this point, and everything I've seen continues to support that. And that UCSB is providing a pretty diverse crowd with respect to the percentage of peer students, the percentage of students who are low income, a huge number of first generation students. And the SAT scores, wow, are really good too. So this is not necessarily a group that is not, well, they're academically prepared, but if half of them are first generation, is there a question of understanding how college, not how college works, but how to succeed best in college? Like, is there a concern about that? Just as an aside, I'm working on another manuscript with a different group. I wasn't familiar with this peer acronym until about a month ago, and now I've seen it literally everywhere. It's interesting how the terminology changes from one thing to another, and that apparently the accepted way of talking about underrepresented group is now this persons excluded by ethnicity and race, PEER. I don't know if other people were surprised by that, but that went from 0 to ubiquitous very quickly, at least in my perception. So everything from beyond here is regression analysis and other statistics to try to understand, are the students doing better? Remember what's being done here. The supplemental stuff that the peer mentor is doing is not biology review. It is not content-based. It is metacognition. It is how to best manage your time, right? It is college survival skills, basic study skills. An advantage to what they've done here too is do general advertising for incoming students to take this opportunity, of which, what's the percentage? Yeah, 437 out of 3,000 end up doing. So it's opt-in. It's encouraging to see that the percentages really don't vary, so it's a representative sample. And so everything is set up to have some really cool statistical findings, some actual worthwhile statistical findings. So that is absolutely an asset to what you're seeing here. And so what do they end up seeing? Well, they want to look at 3 different variables. Academic habit complexity. Now that is what they are calling, are they adopting some of these more positive skills? Are they using metacognitive techniques, for instance? And then more rubber hits the road, looking at grade performance in general chemistry 1A retention to general chemistry 1B. They're interested in biology. They're using a chemistry course for this. Not especially a problem given that everybody has to take this class. So, and I don't know about at your institution. I mean, general chemistry here is certainly more of a traditional weed out course than general biology would be when you compare survey to survey. So this is what they're using to generate their data. Yeah, and here's the part where I'm not even going to try.
That's where I got lost and I was like, do I keep reading?
Yeah. And the punchline is that this all means something, and it's pretty exciting. The idea of, are they actually getting something that is a significant gain from their students? And so they get a significant value here doing the regression analysis, looking at different parameters of trying to figure that out. And then here, what they're trying to do, I had to look through this a few times, what they're trying to do here in table 4 is see if the results they are getting can be not dismissed, but attributed to, oh, it's just the non-first gen students. Oh, it's just the non-peer students. It's not some other factor that's gone into the system. And what's encouraging by what they find here is they're not seeing significance based solely on a particular ethnicity, gender, status of who's gone to college before, that sort of thing. This seems to be a change, an increase in academic efficacy that is not based on a pre-existing parameter or a demographic parameter. So that's a pretty exciting result. It suggests that what they're doing does seem to have an effect. They mentioned, I think a half a letter grade was about the average increase in grade they were seeing in the General Chemistry 1 course. So your impressions of this is what I'd like to get a handle on here. So based on what you're seeing, is this something that could be translated into your environment? Like what do you see as potential strengths of this? What would you maybe add on to make it more adaptable or amenable to your particular institutions?
I was interested. Oh, you go ahead, Donique.
I was just going to say the only problem that I actually saw reading this is we do something similar to Mindy, where we have an overarching program where we have like peer mentors that our older students help. The problem is getting the students to even do it in the first place. And so that's
when you say that, you mean having students opt into the program?
Yeah, because there are meetings where they're supposed to meet 3 times the first semester, and most of the students don't show up, and the ones that do are and end up being the good students. So are they actually getting the good students showing up, or are they having a better retention because it's actually helping? And so I'm not sure how this one actually falls.
Those are fair criticisms. The opt-in version of this, I mean, does allow it that you're not, you're not conscripting people into the program, which means like they want to be there. By virtue of them wanting to be there, are they more inclined to succeed in the first place? The SAT scores are the same between the two groups, but the SAT scores isn't the only metric that might be potentially important there. So I think it's an interesting observation. Mindy, what were you going to say?
I don't know. I was just thinking as I was reading this, like what they're actually were measuring. And I just didn't know if these were the best measurements. I don't know measurements for success of it. I also wasn't sure how I felt about the whole chemistry idea. I mean, at my school, chemistry, it's super easy because they're trying to get majors. And so they purposely they've restructured it to like have an organic it's a really interesting curriculum.
We have not done that here, I will tell you that.
I mean, I wish we do, because I wish we did it, because now students can't like transfer in things. But I guess I just struggled with what they decided to assess, and if it really was showing that this was a success for them.
It's an interesting choice, right? I think I'd alluded to it, that you're not using a biology class to assess biology retention. And that could be a unique factor of the way this curriculum is structured. And at your institution, is there an equivalent introductory biology survey that might serve the same purpose? And Carlos, you're in a more specialized program. So what would you see as the sort of, do you have an introductory course equivalent that works here?
Not really, because we kind of depend on biology and chemistry to do the introductory courses for us and then send us the students. And we've had those discussions of well, it depends on which section of bio 100 or chemistry 100 you took, but that's our prereq. And yeah.
So what you see here would be maybe UCSB specific in terms of the ability to measure success. If you were to repeat this at your particular institution, you certainly might have to think about different courses, maybe more traditional life science courses that would fill the gap here. I do like the 1A to 1B, just thinking about retention, that if you're going into a particular class, like in this case, this second quarter chemistry, that it would be a really good sign that you're serious about being in the sciences. So that would be a reasonable measurement to me of retention. And it's encouraging to see that level of increase that the biome students appear to be having. And so here, I mean, this is very rigorous of looking at all these different parameters and considering ways that the retention or the grade increase, sorry, in Chem 1A is the result of a particular factor, be it ethnicity, be it, I thought this was interesting, the education level of the parents, SAT scores from math or verbal. And there's some things that do seem to be, I guess, somewhat predictable if I'm reading this right. The idea that the SAT math score could be somewhat predictive would make sense. I don't know what to make of the gender results, given that the females are used as reference, and I guess it means the males are getting a significant variation in results here, which is a whole other question about what is good for men versus women, or is there a learning style difference? I mean, it's that age-old question here, and I'm treading carefully here because again, I am out of my depth in understanding some of these statistical analyses. But the overarching thing they find, just looking at these particular values, is that you're not seeing a lot that would say, oh, they're having a higher GPA, and the only reason they're having a higher GPA is because they are blank. And that is I think the encouraging take-home message they're trying to give us here. The retention data is more clean to me. I mean, you're not seeing a lot of other significance. This gets to another interesting question whenever we talk about trying to understand student outcomes, and is simply looking at somebody's grade, somebody's GPA, an effective way of looking at student outcomes. And I've read a lot of interesting stuff about that, that's simply saying, oh, their grades went up, doesn't actually tell us that much. In terms of an instrument, do you guys use GPA in any kind of measurements like that, or would you consider an alternative maybe to figure out if the students are actually improving themselves in the class, be it chemistry 1A or whichever class you might consider?
I'm thinking a lot more about that. You know, we all have to do the assessment of assessing our major and are we meeting our learning goals, which I hate writing those reports, my slow reports every year. So like we have defined, you know, let's say define specific learning objectives that we want our specific courses to meet. And then we decide if a student meets, exceeds, or fails that. And so like, I feel like that would be something you could do not based on GPA, because maybe they need a particular skill, but not another area where it's like not all rolled into one. I mean, you have to tease it out more. But yeah, I would like to have seen it done like that. Are there particular concepts or things you want to see them be able to like do? I don't know.
And I hadn't really thought about this literally until we sat here and just started talking about it, that the fact that the stats seem to be cleaner on this retention data as opposed to GPA data could in fact say something about the efficacy of GPA as a measurement. Like I didn't pick up on that when I first read it. Now I'm like, oh, maybe you don't actually want to do it that way after all. Dominique or Carlos, anyone else on that? Yeah.
The one thing that I say about GPA is, personally for me, the more tests there are in the class, the worse I personally did. And I know some other people like that, as well as the opposite. Some people are absolutely amazing at tests and never did like any worksheets or anything like that. So it only gives you a small snapshot. Like overall, I think it is a good overarching view, but I don't think it's the be all end all.
Yeah, and what you mentioned there, I think, is really interesting. What goes into the GPA? Is it a midterm and a final? Is it presentations and worksheets? And are there high risk, low risk, all that stuff? So depending on how you put the class together, it could be meaningful. If it's all or nothing, this one test, that could be a very different beast. So I do want to mention here, and I always appreciate when these limitations are acknowledged. They talk about some of the potential limitations they see here in using Chem 1A as the particular course that could be analyzed. What they don't talk a lot about here, that I believe gets relegated to supplemental data or supplemental information, is more about what it is they actually do in the biome class. I'm not sure why that didn't show up here, and I would have really liked to learn more about that. Not that I can't go and try to dig in more to that information, but I am surprised that we don't learn more about the program itself in this particular manuscript. So other comments or ideas that people have about implementing a peer mentoring, efficacy of peer mentoring. Is this something that, in Mindy's case, does work, but something that can maybe potentially work at your institution? What strategies one might take to build such a program up?
Well, I have to go, but I will say, I think you need money. I don't think this is
yeah.
something which could just.
I'm asking these questions, and what I'm really asking is, someone tell me how to do this, because this would be really good to know.
Yeah, I do think that this is something which, I think about like HHM, so when we applied for our HHMI grant, this was a part of it was to be able to have better support and peer mentors for like these students, first generation college students. And I know there are funding opportunities for colleges to be able to do this. I looked at one through HHMI a couple of years ago. The challenge changed, but I do think you need to have a strong financial backing to be able to do this, because it's not just having the students show up. I think you need to have programming. I think you need to have some aspect that isn't just purely academic.
I think that's true, and I know we always try to get away with the unfunded mandate here. Like, oh, what a great idea! You're dedicated. You'll participate for this. So I think grounding it with resources absolutely would be of value here.
Yeah, hi. In my program, it's going to be difficult because I'm in a community college. But I can see, you definitely need money, but I think that if, at least in my case, if I partner with another university, then it might be possible. So I am actually thinking about it in collaborating with like the a bigger university like University of California, either Berkeley or Santa Cruz, and then I see it a possibility, because whatever I cannot do here in my community college, maybe I can do it at the university. But it does take a lot of time.
Yeah. Is the concern logistical? Like being able to
Yes.
get people together for extra time?
Yeah, logistical and financial as well.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything that we need in the lab is kind of lacking.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And also the training of students would require, at least in my head, like a semester of thinking, how am I going to set this up? How am I going to really give them a good experience so that they give students the support we desire for that particular class that is may not be content specific. And in that case, I need the time to plan the training course. And Uma and others have created this.
Yeah.
And then I need the time to recruit and train students to then do it. And I don't think you need more training is always good, but I don't think you need an extensive program just to get up and running. So in my head, the timeline would be like a year to get something going and people in the classroom in a formal way, not the piecemeal thing that I'm doing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, I'm thinking about ways we would do training, which we would, piggyback onto some other initiatives on campus, and that would take at least a semester, right, to get people in the training, get them through the training, and then actually put them forward. So that would be logistically, I mean, a worthwhile challenge, but certainly a challenge to figure out.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge, and you need somebody to take ownership, right, and drive. And that's the problem, is we're all so busy with 100 million things.
Yep.
That I think that is the biggest challenge, having somebody with that kind of time to drive it.
Yeah, these things need their champions, and at smaller schools especially, but not just smaller schools, it tends to be the same cadre of people that do all of this stuff. So
Yes.
If they are burnt out, if they are at their wits' end, you're not going to be able to add another thing on, for sure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you
guys.
for bringing this paper. That was really cool.
It's helpful. I mean, I always end these sessions by telling people, like, hey, if people are interested in submitting papers, please let me know and we'll get them in here. But this is I've thought about peer mentoring a while, and it's been a start-stop thing for me. And I am partially on sabbatical next year, and I'm thinking of, like, in this next wave of my career, this may be something I try to be able to spend more time on. So that would be good.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. It's a fun discussion, and we'll have 2 more of these if you'd like. And otherwise, submit your paper ideas and we will go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.